Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys and any moderators out there and any channel members. We have an amazing show lined up for you guys here today with an episode brought to you by Contact in the Desert this year, May 30th through June 3rd, the 10-year anniversary. Get your tickets now and I will be there, and come by and say hi. The link to the on-sale tickets are in the description of this video, and if you use promo code EARTH10, you'll get an extra 10% off that ticket price. And today we have with us one of the keynote speakers from Contact in the Desert 10, the son of J. Allen Hynek of Project Blue Book fame, Paul Hynek. Welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Hey, Ryder. How are you, buddy?
Doing great, and I'm excited to have the conversation with you here today. And I guess we should start off with just what is your lecture going to be about at Contact in the Desert this year? And this isn't your first time speaking at this conference.
No, not my first rodeo. And I'm giving three presentations. One is Ufology 101. One is how to demonstrate the objective reality of supernatural encounters. And the other one is Bitcoin astronomy, the nexus of UFOs, DMT, and Bitcoin.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about DMT before we started the show. So you're kind of like a crypto expert?
Yes, I'm a crypto aficionado. And I think Bitcoin is one of the biggest fundamental innovations of our lifetimes, and it's going to change the world.
You think it's going to shoot up over $1 million? Like
everyone is saying that Fidelity Investment says it's going to $1 billion, so I'll go with them.
Interesting. So what I really wanted to talk to you about here this evening is that a lot of people know about Project Blue Book, but people don't know that, well, some people do, but it's kind of under the radar that there were two other government programs ran by the Air Force to look into the UFO phenomenon prior to Project Blue Book, which was Project Sign, ran from 1947 to 49, and then Project Grudge from 49 to 51. And your dad, J. Allen Hynek, was pretty critical to Project Sign and Project Grudge, saying that they were pretty much unscientific. Though pretty much all three of the programs, including Project Blue Book, all came to the pretty much same conclusions that the majority of the reported UFOs appeared to represent actual aircraft, but there wasn't enough data to determine their origin, and that pretty much almost all of these cases were explained by ordinary causes. And your dad, J. Allen Hynek, was a part of all three of these programs, correct? That being Project Sign, Grudge, and
right.
Blue Book.
That's right. And they were interesting, but very frustrating for my father, who is a scientist, because especially Project Blue Book, which is the longest lasting of the three, was not a serious scientific endeavor. It was more of a public relations exercise to sort of tamp down hysteria about flying saucers. And somebody once called it the Society for the Explanation of the Uninvestigated, because their whole impetus was just to stamp solved on all of the 12,000 odd cases that they deigned to investigate. But still, even with that institutional impetus to explain them all, they still couldn't, in good conscience, explain over 5% of the cases they investigated.
Now, when you think, what do you think that changed Allen Hynek's mind on the skepticism that he has surrounding the phenomenon, and a sudden change of heart into the extraterrestrial realm? Because I believe that's kind of a rare thing these days. Normally people are believers from the jump. Like, for instance, Bill Cooper, hardcore believer. Toward the end, he wanted to exit and remove himself from the entire community because he figured out that it was all human craft, more specifically Nazi craft. And he was killed not long after, unrelated to his UFO research, but still a weird coincidence. So do you know what Allen Hynek maybe had experienced that would have changed his mind, that there's nothing to the phenomenon, to a complete 180 full-fledged believer?
You know, I'll liken UFOs to Bitcoin. Anybody who studies Bitcoin for more than 100 hours comes away, let's say, a believer. And I think it's the same thing with UFOs. At first, you know, they were called flying saucers, and my father thought it would take a couple weekends worth of work to help the Air Force just solve the whole issue. But a funny thing happened on the way to the debunking parade. And over the course of years, he was involved for 20 years. He didn't really go from a skeptic to a believer, because I don't think that's really how scientists view the world. But he went to accepting the accumulated weight of the data. Not necessarily that they're extraterrestrial or interdimensional or time travelers or what have you, but that there was a bona fide phenomena that really merited serious scientific study. And that's where he landed.
So he didn't necessarily believe in the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that extraterrestrials were responsible for these UFOs.
Well, he liked the word meta-terrestrial because he felt that there was something beyond the pale of, as you mentioned, Nazi craft, something beyond human technology. Now, that could come from the ocean, it could come from space, another dimension, but he and Jacques Vallée and others certainly felt that the extraterrestrial hypothesis, although it could certainly be part of it, didn't encompass the totality of the phenomena. And there are a lot of problems, you know, logistical issues and challenges with extraterrestrial travel. So maybe, you know, he thought perhaps something interdimensional. Who knows?
Interdimensional or crypto-terrestrial, I think, is a term that's used now for other beings that are from the planet, that are from Earth.
Yeah, I mean that would answer. You know, the universe is a very big place, and even though we've been beaming episodes of I Love Lucy and, you know, radio shows into the universe for many decades, it's non-trivial just to find us, because the universe is massive. And then if extraterrestrials come all this way, whether they're biological beings or some type of AI sentinels, why don't they do more than they've done? You know, you know, you could say that they're trying to, you know, honor the prime directive and not interfere, or they're manipulating us behind the scenes. But it seems to me if extraterrestrials located us and decided we were worth visiting, I would think they'd do a little bit more than what we've had reported so far.
I agree with that statement. And now, Alan Hynek was a part of the Robertson panel too, correct?
Yeah, not a featured player. He was an associate professor at the time. And even though he was the subject matter expert in the room, they didn't really deign to listen to him much. Because both the Robertson panel in 1952 and the Condon Committee in 1969 were, you know, exercises by the Air Force to get some kind of academic legitimacy to tamping it down or shutting it down in the case of the Condon Committee.
Now, what was the Robertson panel set up? Because I'm pretty sure, unless I'm getting it wrong, the Robertson panel was set up by the CIA.
That's right.
What was that panel intended to do? Was that to analyze the information from Project Blue Book?
No, neither the Robertson panel or the Condon Committee were honest exercises into, you know, seeing where the cards stack up. They just wanted to say, nothing to see here, please disperse. We don't need any government efforts or resources to studying this because there's nothing to it.
Well, it's interesting that the Robertson panel was started up just a year after the Washington Flap event of 1952 with the UFOs over the White House. The
Right.
Robertson panel was started in 1953, I believe. What do you think about the Washington Flap event?
Well, it's a very interesting situation because you had Truman scrambling fighter jets after objects seen in the sky. So this was not something, you know, written about in the paper that Farmer Jones someplace in Maryland saw. This is the United States Air Force on repeated days scrambling fighter jets to go after things in the sky. It's pretty friggin' crazy.
It is crazy. And if you think about it, we just got out of World War II 7 years earlier. The Cold War is starting to really heat up. Now, if the government really believed that these craft were from an advanced off-world civilization, and this was like a threatening position to the government by positioning craft over the White House, then why would they why would you give a shoot down order and scramble all these jets and risk war with a supposed intergalactic species of beings? It makes zero sense to me. But who knows? I wasn't there. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think in that situation, our armed forces have kind of a reflexive posture. If there's a threat in the sky, the Air Force has to do something. It's their job to demonstrate air superiority to our enemies in an offensive capacity, but also to show the world and Americans that we've got this. We've got this covered. Nothing is going to rain down terror upon your heads. So the Air Force is between a rock and a hard place. Even if they realize in the brief moments when they're analyzing whatever's flying around that this is beyond our capabilities, they still have to make a college effort and try to go up there and try to shoot it down if they can.
Yeah, that would make sense, but holy crap, thinking that maybe this is an advanced off-world species, like you don't really know what they're capable of. Harry Truman giving a shoot down order after one of the biggest wars that we've ever been involved in. Another war is, happening, the Cold War. It's like, that's really strange that would even be considered. And then also, what if it's human technology? What if it's like human craft?
I think though, if you go back to then with that kind of simmering tension all the time, it's very quick decision making. Sir, there are objects in our airspace over the nation's capital. Go get them. I think that's all the thought process there is, because they're still more or less on a war footing.
Yeah, that would make sense. Now, excuse me. Did the Robertson panel or Project Sign, Project Grudge, or Project Blue Book ever say that UFOs, like 100%, just didn't exist? Or were they saying that this isn't extraterrestrial craft?
None of those. Project Sign was the most sort of open. The aptly named Project Grudge was nothing at all, and Project Blue Book was very dismissive. Because as I said, they weren't studies, they weren't scientific efforts, they were public relations exercises. They just wanted people to feel calm that we've got this. There's really nothing to see here. So none of their, although they would sometimes say, we don't know what this was, they would never say, hey, this is extraterrestrial or something that represents a real threat to our national security.
So they never really outright denied that there was a phenomenon, or?
Well, no, they did. I mean, many times they would say, we don't see any evidence to suggest that there's something extraterrestrial. That's really what people focused on. But there were cases where they say, we don't know what this is. We can't determine exactly what it is. But once again, folks, don't worry. There's nothing. There's no little green men with ray guns out there.
Which is kind of what they've said from the very beginning, right? And it was what they say to this very day.
Yeah, sure.
It seems like the government has been saying the exact same thing since 1947. It's just as recently as this year with Arrow and the historical UAP report. It's the same thing, but now they admit that a majority of it is governmental technology, military drones, misidentified aircraft, and natural phenomenon. So it's like they haven't really changed their position much.
The Navy has to some degree, but I don't expect them to, and I don't really care what they say or do. They're a bad faith, corrupt central actor. And, you know, let's say that they have downed saucers and maybe alien bodies in a hangar somewhere, and they're working on reverse engineering the propulsion system. If I'm an Air Force general, let's do a role play, Ryder. Let's say you and I are both Air Force generals, tried and true career veterans. And it's you and I who know all the secrets that we have, the bodies, the hangars, everything. You and I are going to determine if we're going to disclose that. And we know that there are congressional panels, Danny Sheehan and Steve Bassett and Richard Dolan knocking at the door trying to get the information from us. But here's my position. I'll be good and goddamned if some pasty-faced pencil pusher on Capitol Hill is going to tell me what to do. I didn't join the Army or the Navy or the Air Force for compliance. I joined for full spectrum dominance. And there is no way on God's green earth I'm giving up these secrets that we have here because they could give superiority to the Chinese and the Russians. So I don't care what subpoenas say. I don't care what the Constitution says. I'm here. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. And I'm going to do a code red. I'm not going to give that stuff up. What say you, Ryder, General Lee?
Yeah, I agree with that definitely to a certain extent. And when you look at like crash retrievals, right? I think there's a misconception of like crash retrievals because many in the community think, oh, well, when they think crash retrieval, they get this idea and this thought that, it's something of like modern times that, the military witnessed this craft going down or they saw it on the radar and they immediately went and got it. Well, that's not necessarily accurate. A crash retrieval could be something that was dug up in an archaeological dig. It doesn't matter how long the craft has been there from the time that you find it. It's still going to be considered a crash retrieval. So if me and you right now, Paul, went to say Iraq and did an archaeological dig and we found some ancient technology that is in the form of some sort of craft, would that not be considered a crash retrieval?
Yeah, it would. And here's another thing. Let's say that there's a craft retrieved at Roswell. Roswell is not far from White Sands Air Force Base, which is a nuclear facility. That's not under the purview of the United States Air Force. That's under the control of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And they do not have to follow any kind of subpoena to the Pentagon. They're a different agency with a completely different classification system. So even if you and I, the Air Force generals, decide to cough up some tidbits of secrets, that doesn't impact anything that's controlled by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Yeah, I think a lot of these words and these buzzwords that fly around the community have alternate meanings, different meanings, and the public thinks that they mean one thing when they're actually talking about or in reference to something completely different.
Yeah.
Like, let's take, reverse engineering as an example, or alien invasion as an example, or fake alien invasion or national security threat. Now, it's possible that people talk about a national security threat because it's like what you just mentioned. Like, well, maybe it's possible that the reason that we don't disclose these things is because if another country found out about it, then we would be exposed, right? That might actually be the national security threat that people are talking about, not a national security threat because there's extraterrestrials flying around in our airspace, but a national security threat in the way that if people if other countries find out what the technology really is, then it leaves the United States exposed.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think the military is going to give up any secrets. And if the military has captured saucers and figured out the technology, they'd be speaking English in Beijing and Moscow by now. We're not going to sit on that. We're going to use that. So either they've got saucers and they don't know what to do with them, or they don't have saucers, as far as I see it.
So you think if we do have the craft, we don't know how to maneuver? I mean, there's several advanced military drones that are unpiloted drones. Maybe they haven't figured out a way to put a human being inside of the craft and be able to move it around, but there is several highly advanced military drones that look very similar to what people would consider a UFO.
Sure. And it's a very difficult matter. Let's say we have a saucer somewhere and it has some type of anti-gravity propulsion system. Even if we figured out how that works, how do we make that interface with our current power grid? It might use something completely different for energy. So it's extraordinarily difficult, I think, to integrate some foreign technology that is so far advanced beyond ours into anything that we have.
Well, yeah, and our technology is always changing. I mean, every year you get a new port on your freaking phone, so what's to say in 100 to 200 years that all the technology that we think that we have right now is so advanced won't be obsolete? I mean, look at floppy disk. Nobody uses a floppy disk anymore, but back in the 90s, that was what everyone used to store all their information on, as a floppy disk. Yep. No one has a floppy disk or use a floppy disk drive anymore. It's obsolete now. So I think people thinking that, we're at the height of our technology right now is completely a ridiculous assumption, because even in another 10 years, the technology that we're using right now is probably going to be obsolete. So think 100 years in the future, what's it going to be like? People are going to look at an external hard drive and be like, what is this? Well, I can't even do anything with this.
I think the delta between captured alien technology and our own would seem like the difference between a quantum computer and a fire. And if we're at the level of fire, how do we even begin to understand, much less control, some type of quantum computer? We don't even have the ability to understand the concept, much less the engineering.
Then you get the thought of like ancient civilizations and how supposedly people have theorized that ancient civilizations were highly advanced technologically. Well, that doesn't mean that they were using the types of technology that we have right now. It could be a completely different way, a completely different version of advanced technology that we completely couldn't understand in today's time. Even if we found some version of a highly advanced ancient technology, that doesn't mean that we would be able to figure it out. Because it would be, in my thoughts and my idea, it would be completely different to anything that we have now.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes more sense than this ancient civilization following along. I think that we assume that, as today in our age right now, that these people were following the same trajectory in the same direction that we are currently following. And that doesn't have to be the case. It's probably not the case. And then when you look at, this alien invasion stuff too, and like you can take the word illegal and then just tack it onto the front of alien, and it becomes a completely different word. I mean, you look around, how many people have talked about how they're among us, they've always been here, they're all around us, right? Well, They have. What's to the south of the United States? Mexico. What's to the north of the United States? Canada. If I go to another country, I'm an alien. Right? And if I go into another country illegally, I'm an illegal alien. I'm not from that country. Across borders to get into that country. So they play around with a lot of these words when I think that they mean something completely different. What's your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, the U.S. government has always engaged in disinformation about UFOs, and I think they always will. I don't think, nor do I care if they're going to hold another hearing and disclose this or that. I don't trust them. I don't expect them to actually divulge significant information, probably for our lifetimes.
I agree with that. And there's always this thing in the background of the disclosure community too, that people seem to always be like, oh, well, something's going to happen soon. The government's going to disclose something soon. And that's been a common trend through ufology, dating back to the early 20s with Charles Fort. He was saying in the early 20s that he felt like something was going to happen soon, and then nothing ever happens.
Well, it's the UFO version of Jesus coming back.
Yes.
Sure. I don't know which one will happen first.
Well, according to Samuel Eden Thompson, one of the very first contactees in the United States in Washington in 1950, he said that he was told by the Venetians, and he was on their craft for approximately 3 days. He was told by the Venetians from the planet Venus that landed and contacted him that Jesus will be returning, I think, in the year of 10,000, I believe is what he said.
That's a long time. Does that mean that Jesus is hanging out on Venus now?
What a lot of these contactees say, that Jesus and Krishna are from Venus, and that Satan is from Mars. And
wow.
Well, I can't find it, but Samuel Eden Thompson. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'm going to pull this up. Share screen, Samuel Eden Thompson. Okay, so Samuel Eden Thompson, a railroad worker in the 70s. Thompson claimed that on the evening of March 28th, 1950, while driving his home in Washington, he came across a large flying saucer in the woods. The saucer, he claimed, was about 80 feet across and 30 feet tall. Two naked, deeply tanned humans in the form of were very attractive, were playing near the craft's entrance. Thompson claimed that he had approached within 50 feet of the saucer, which emitted a strong sun-like heat. Several naked adults, humanoids, attractive and very deeply tanned, then appeared at the craft's door. After realizing Thompson meant them no harm, they beckoned him closer. The crew consisted of 20 adults and 25 children, and later about 5 to 15 years of age. Thompson claimed he spent the next 40 hours with the humanoids, that they were from Venus, he learned, and had stopped at Earth despite the fact that other Venetian saucers had been shot down by Earth-based military forces. The Venetians said that all the Earth's problems stemmed from astrology. Humans were born under different star signs, while the Venetians were all born under the sign of Venus, as was Thompson. The Venetians further said Thompson that they were vegetarian, that they never grew ill. Thompson also claimed that the Venetians were naive and childlike. They did not know who built their saucers and seemed to possess little to no curiosity. Thompson claimed, I was right. Thompson claimed that he was the first of many Earthlings who would meet the Venetians, and that after humanity had seen the wisdom of the Venetian ways, Jesus Christ would return in 20 AD, 10,000 AD, sorry.
Wow. So I did not know that the Venetians were vegetarians.
Vegetarians, never grew ill, claim that Christ is going to return in 10,000 AD. So
So if they
that's
don't
a
grow
bad.
old, maybe they'll last that long. Who knows?
That's some bad news for the Christians. They got a long time to wait for the return of Christ on
Yeah,
that.
and you better put down that burger.
So we've kind of danced around this concept of maybe some of these craft aren't from outer space, that not all that they're possibly not from outer space, like your dad, Alan Hynek, had kind of proposed, and others have proposed as well. Jacques Vallée being one of those later on in his career, and several other people throughout this time period have come to the conclusion that a lot of these craft aren't extraterrestrial craft. And there's been a lot of conclusions and a lot of thoughts and ideas that, well, if they're not from outer space, they must be interdimensional, they must be extra dimensional. And now we have new names like ultra dimensional and super ultra mega invisible dimensional from the 5th and to the 12th dimension, Lyran Palladian people. What's your personal thoughts based off of the information that you have with your dad, all the study and the research? Are you on board with the crypto-terrestrial theory? Are you on with the interdimensional theory? Are you on with the space aliens from outer space theory, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, again, I'm not so big on the extraterrestrial hypothesis. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I lean more towards something from Earth or some other dimension. Another dimension makes a lot of sense to me because we have a lot of reports of craft just appearing and then disappearing, like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. And to me, if they're from another dimension, it makes a lot more sense than extraterrestrial. That would explain how they would find us, because they are adjacent in some way and maybe related to us in some other way. So I like that much better than entities hopping aboard a spaceship in Zeta Reticuli and coming all this way and scaring some animals at night and leaving.
What do you think of Carl Jung's thought and idea surrounding the phenomenon? Are you familiar with Carl Jung's work?
Yeah. It's fascinating. All I know for sure is that a reasonable person can look at the evidence and conclude there's something beyond the pale of normalcy here. And I believe it's beyond our historical and current technological capabilities. I believe the answer lies not in the Pentagon, but beyond that. Could it be something in the mind? As Carl Jung and Jacques Vallée believes a lot in sort of the consciousness aspect. Certainly could be. I think it was Richard Feynman who said there are two kinds of people in the world: those who are okay with questions they cannot answer, and those who are not okay with their answers being questioned. And if you're going to be serious and look at the UFO field, I think you have to be ready to embrace a phenomena and not know where it comes from. Now, a lot of people feel they have personal revelations from extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, and that could be part of it. I don't know. But I really don't know where they come from, but I lean towards interdimensional. It just seems to be the most naturally elegant solution to me.
Have you ever met what you could consider a extraterrestrial under the influence of a psychedelic substance?
I have communicated with what I feel to be a far superior intelligence while taking DMT. Absolutely.
And what was that like? Would that correlate to any other experiencers that said that they have experienced this type of phenomenon? Was it similar to anything that you had heard anyone talk about that may or may not have been under the influence of a psychedelic substance?
Mine was a little bit different. I didn't see entities. I just felt the intelligence pulsing all around me. And I asked, are you what we perceive to be UFOs and aliens? And I felt like trillions of miles of synapses and neurons firing. And the answer came back to me, we can't explain in a way that you would understand. And I thought, well, look, if DMT machine elves are related to UFO aliens, yeah, I could see how that connective tissue would be beyond my ability to understand. So, yeah, thank you. So I felt emboldened by that, because one of the common aspects of people who take DMT is that it feels hyper real. And I'm a big fan of my friend Andrew Gallimore and his books on the topic. He's a neuroscientist who theorizes that indeed DMT is not hallucinogenic, but it's actually revelatory, that you're seeing things in a very real universe that our day-to-day waking brain is not attuned to see. And by virtue of taking DMT and perhaps other psychedelics, you're able to see the world through a different filter that's no less real, but that we're not just tuned into seeing in our day-to-day life.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, how much do you think of this phenomenon? Because I'm kind of under the impression, Paul, and you can disagree with me or not agree with me, but I personally believe that a lot of these contactees, the people that have claimed to be in contact with supposed extraterrestrials, whether that be aliens, angels, any of these types of things, could possibly be leaving out a crucial thing in their experience, that they were under the influence of some form of drug. What do you think of that?
Well, look, in the case of DMT, it's just about the most powerful psychedelic drug. So you can't rule out the possibility that what you're experiencing isn't what we would say is objectively real, but is the result of a very powerful neurochemical impacting your brain. So one of my goals is to help people who take DMT or who say they see ghosts or aliens with a protocol to help them demonstrate, hey, this is objectively real. Here's evidence that demonstrates the reality of these encounters beyond my feeling that it's real. And I think that would be a watershed moment if we're able to do that.
Right. I just think that, I mean, I don't think that there's really anything wrong with using these substances to, have these sorts of experiences, but excluding that from what you're talking about, or not what you're talking about, what other people claim that they're talking about, that they're meeting these extraterrestrials, that these extraterrestrials are coming into their room. And if they were on some form of psychedelic, then to me it seems like fraud not to include that into the discussion.
I don't think anybody who is theorizing that the experiences under DMT or other psychedelics might be real is discounting the possibility that you're hallucinating. I've never heard anybody say that.
That's good. That's good, because I mean, if it's just sketchy if something like say a channeler, right, or someone that claims to have these types of experiences every night in their bedroom, that these extraterrestrials surround them, or that they're in communication with the Galactic Federation of Light, or the Brotherhood of Light, or the 33 Confederation planet of Venus, right? And they are indeed under the influence of a psychedelic substance, and they're not disclosing the fact that they're under uh, a psychedelic substance and they're excluding that idea, I mean, what they've done, then that seems very disingenuous to me.
Well, sure. Of course it is. To me, eyewitness accounts, whether you admit you're on a psychedelic or you're not on a psychedelic, don't really mean a lot. It's just you could have a hallucination at broad daylight, completely sober with no drug in your system. You could be mistaken. You could be lying. You could be a religious zealot. There's all sorts of reasons that you may claim to see something that wasn't there. So for me, I want to help experiencers bring back evidence to suggest that this experience was objectively real, no matter what you may or may not have been taking. That's immaterial at that point.
Right. I agree with that. And also the idea and the thought that you can unlock like natural DMT in your brain that seems like a lot of people don't really know about, that you can do breathing exercises, you can get in float tanks, you can have a psychedelic experience without actually taking a drug.
Well, I think you can have, and I've done sensory deprivation tanks, I've done breath work. I think you can have powerful experiences with those, but I don't think it's been demonstrated conclusively that they unlock DMT in your pineal gland. That's what a lot of people think, but I don't think there's enough evidence to demonstrate that we know that for sure. Not to downplay any experiences along those lines, because I did breath work and it blew me away. Just a few minutes of breathing in a certain way, and I couldn't believe how intense that experience was.
Yeah, it is really intense. I've done a lot of breath work and I've gotten close to getting outside of my body, but never quite got there. Have you had regular astral experiences, like outside of your body or out of body experiences?
Nothing that I would write home about, but I will say that I'm the CFO for the Monroe Institute, which was started by Robert Monroe, who's a pioneer in the field of, as he called his first book, Journeys Out of the Body. So I'm helping this fantastic nonprofit, the Monroe Institute, get their technology out there, sound technology, binaural beats, and other things to help people to facilitate these types of experiences.
It's really interesting. I've done a deep dive into the remote viewing, the government remote viewing contract, and it turns out that Army intelligence paid the Monroe Institute, I believe it was $2,000. I'd have to recheck that, to take some of their Army personnel to go study with Robert Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But those programs kind of get confused because you have the Gateway project, which was the Monroe Institute, and you have the Stargate project. Yep. And a lot of people think that, well, I'm guessing that some people think that they were a part of the Stargate project when they really weren't a part of the Stargate project. They were just a part of the Monroe Gateway program, which just caused some confusion within the how everything is in confusion of where can people get those original tapes from the Monroe Institute, because it's hemisync technology, right? It's frequency technology, and I've heard that you may have to have like a specific kind of headphones to hear the frequencies properly.
To take advantage of binaural beats, yes, you either need speakers, different speakers, or headphones, because what they do is broadcast one frequency for one ear and a different frequency for another ear, and your brain has to sort of entrain them, and that helps facilitate delta and theta waves. So yes, you can't just do it from one speaker on a phone.
I don't know if it was, I think it was something I was looking up the other day. There's something about headphones. They've taken out some of the frequencies within headphones. You'd have to get like an older pair of headphones, because that's the best way to do it, right? Is to listening to the frequencies through headphones and not through a speaker, right? You would want to.
Well, if you're in a room with speakers on either side, it works fine too.
Okay.
But as long as you have stereo headphones, it'll work.
Now, the goal of that is to get outside of your body, correct? To induce a out of body experience.
Not necessarily. It's to create, let's say, an atmosphere that can be used for leaving your body, but can just be highly meditative and calming and, introspective as well.
That's interesting. So it can like rewire your brain in a positive way, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think rewire is a bit scary of a term, but yeah, I mean, it can create a beneficial effect on your neurochemistry in a way that you can then do more or go deeper inside and have a lot of beneficial impact for you.
Yeah, I agree. Does the Monroe Institute still do they still have a facility where people can
Oh
go
yeah,
to?
yeah, in Faber, Virginia.
That's
And there
interesting.
are residential programs. There are also online and virtual reality programs that they have going on all the time.
Silent Voice is saying not interested in people who haven't done it. He's referring to DMT. Well, Paul just said that he's done DMT. I've done
Oh, yeah,
DMT too. I did it four and a
yeah.
half years ago. I did Bufo
I'm
and DMT.
a very big proponent of DMT. Very big fan.
Yeah, I mean, my first experience and that was my only time, and it was super scary. So I never
It
said
can
that I
be.
would never going to do it again.
Yeah, I've been with people who didn't receive adequate warning, and it can feel like you're skydiving and going up because it's just so overwhelming of a freight train, and it can the onset can be so sudden and so strong that even if you've done other psychedelics before, you can just feel overwhelmed. And I think Terrence McKenna has a lot of great quotes about DMT, but he said the only thing you really have to fear is death by astonishment, because it's so overwhelming, especially the first time. If you do a strong kind of it, like Bufo or synthetic or a strong Changa, even if you're told it comes on like a freight train, you just can't understand how fast and how strong it can be.
It is. It's super powerful. And when I did it, I was speaking to you about this before we started the show. I inhaled very deeply, and I didn't know that you weren't supposed to inhale really fast. I wasn't told that you were supposed to do it super slow. And then I just got stuck in this this weird like white void. Like there was nothing.
Yeah.
There's just nothing there. But I was told that you have to kind of exit out of that nothing realm, and whenever you completely let go, you kind of bust out of that white nothing realm. Have you been into the white void before?
Yeah, I've been in several kinds of voids, black, white, and then sort of the more sort of Changa level breakthrough multicolored tunnel, and then you're in some kind of realm. And I've also done with a vape pen, which is keeping your eyes open, and you're not sort of leaving your body or leaving the room, but you're interacting with the room, kind of more like acid or psilocybin, where you're still there. You still understand that I'm in a room, there are people here. You may not be the most engaging conversationalist at that point, as you're just like, whoa, the Buddha poster on the wall is pulsing in and out, but you're still there. So I think there's a lot of benefit into trying that whole spectrum of experiences, from DMT itself to Changa, ayahuasca, vape pen, synthetic, Bufo, all that. I think is immensely valuable for people. I caution people not to do it until they're ready in a very safe environment with people who know what they're doing, so that you don't have that overwhelming experience that's beyond what you're ready to do.
Yeah, Candace is saying that once was enough for her too. She was in
Ah,
a black void.
yeah. It's not always pleasant. And I don't do it always to have a pleasant experience. I do it for both therapy, because I think it's valid plant medicine, but also I'm on a quest to see if there's a relationship between DMT and UFOs and ghosts. That's my jam. I'm not able to summon UFOs like a Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, but I am able to create a ceremony and do DMT and experience that. So that's I've had some experiences that were overwhelming. I remember one time I was thinking to myself, my brain chemistry has been fundamentally rewired. I just can never go back to life on Earth. I just can't. And I wasn't sad. I wasn't happy. It was just matter of fact. And 15 minutes later, I'm looking at my phone, checking ways for traffic to go home. Completely normal again.
Yeah, I've had a near-death experience that was like that, where I entered into the black void. Thanks, Candace, for your comment and being a member. Really appreciate you. I had a near-death experience where it was very difficult for me to come back into this 3D physical existence, where because in this black void, like everything was like super peaceful, right? It was just like everything was just amazing, even though there wasn't anything, even though it was just a void. It was like peaceful, like the weight of the world had lifted up off of your shoulders.
cool.
There wasn't any pain or anything like that. And then I had to like fight myself to come back into this 3D physical reality, because I thought that whatever was in that black void was more real than this 3D physical reality. I thought that this 3D physical reality was fake.
Yeah, that's what people often feel. And again, it doesn't mean that it's objectively occurring. It could just be a hallucination. But many people feel that what they experience when taking DMT is hyper real. And it's a very common sensation that you can't shake. But again, for me, one person, including me, who says, hey, I saw something and I know it's real, that doesn't mean anything. So I'm trying to gather evidence, like information from the DMT entities that they shouldn't have, or that I don't have, that go beyond my abilities. If I can bring back answers to factoring very large prime numbers or solving a math problem that we can't solve, I can then go to the scientific community and say, look, I've got information I shouldn't have. They would look at that and they're not going to say, oh, well, that proves aliens. They'll say, well, yeah, you have information you shouldn't have. Let's take a look and see how you got that. So my interest, I don't care about the government. This train has left the station. And if they want to jump on the caboose and follow us, that's great. But the real progress is made, I feel, by uniting the experiencer communities and mainstream science. And for us to learn how to talk in ways that science understands. The evidence that we've collected so far about UFOs, whether it's crop circles or strange alloys or star maps, this doesn't mean anything to science. So what I want to do is inculcate in experiencer communities science-friendly ways to influence, because you can't really control these situations. Maybe you can influence them and ask questions, the answers of which would be interesting to scientists. Because if we can get scientists to say, hey, there's something really weird going on here, I need to look at this more, and get them talking with us, then I think we can make really qualitative progress.
How do you map out the DMT world though, when a DMT trip is a standard 15 minutes, maybe less, maybe just slightly more? Is there a way to induce the DMT trip to last longer?
Yeah. My friend Andrew Gallimore and Rick Strassman have collaborated to create what they call DMTX, which are extended intravenously given sessions that can last an hour or more.
Yeah, Yeah, that would be the way to do it because I feel like a regular DMT trip is not long enough to collect or get all the information. But if you had several people going in for hours at a time, probably make the
Yeah.
research a little bit easier.
Because even if you do it a lot, it just takes a little while to just understand what's going on again because it's so overwhelming. Marco Rodriguez in a paper talked about a protocol to ask the DMT machine elves to factor a very large prime number that he provides to them. And then either he comes back with the answer, or even more interestingly, somebody else comes back with that answer. That would show not only that some intelligence is able to answer questions that a human can't, but one human asks them and another human brings back the answer. That would be fascinating.
That would be really fascinating. Excuse me. Has anybody ever reported during a DMT trip that they have met another person that's been on a DMT trip?
Yeah, I think people have said that. And one of the things that's interesting to me about DMT is that, unlike other psychedelics I've done, when I do it, often I'll feel like I'm in the same realm and it welcomes me back, sometimes by name. So it feels like it's always there and you can tap into it when you want. But other psychedelics I've done is just like a different feeling. I might feel connected to the tree there. Oh, I see, a vortex opening up in the wall, what have you. But with DMT, it just feels like there is a realm that's either that you go to or that's created in your brain or what have you, that's always there. It's a very different feeling for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting because we've heard of like collective or multiple psilocybin trips where people kind of experience the same thing. And of course, like dreaming, people have collective dreams of the same thing or see each other in their dreams and interact with each other in their dreams and then, wake up and like talk about it. That's a kind of a common thing. But doing that in a DMT state, I think is very telling of the possibilities that is actually going on. And what that means, I don't really know.
Yeah, until someone can come back in a way that is controlled enough for the satisfaction of scientists with information that they shouldn't have, and to do it on a repeated basis and to indicate that it is indeed information, very difficult answers that are coming back to this human or to another human while taking DMT, we just don't know what's happening there. It could be some elaborate chemical adaptation of your brain that's making all this. We don't know, but I aim to find out.
What's the most profound, we're going to end on this. What's the most profound thing that, because you mentioned earlier that you would ask the DMT entities if what they are is, UFOs or what we personify to be UFOs or extraterrestrials or aliens. Was that the most, that couldn't have been the most profound thing that you asked these DMT entities, right?
Yeah, it's the most profound thing, sort of most profound communication I've had. Just the feelings, whether real or not, that I've had of just like watching the fabric of the universe being created right in front of me. And feeling like there is no place that's more central, that's home, that is like ground zero for the universe. And I'm watching it, and the entities who are creating the universe stop and welcome me by name. It's a really friggin' cool sensation that the most powerful entities in the world look over their shoulders and see me and say, "Hey, Paul, how are you?" It's amazing.
Did it start with a big bang?
My brother did an experience once where he set his intention to see the Big Bang, and he felt that he was taken on this tour of galaxies being born, and he was guided by this big red hand of God.
That would be quite an experience.
Yeah.
Quite an
Yes,
experience.
brother.
Wow. Well, Paul, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your
Sure.
time this evening. Can you let people know one more time about your the lectures that you're going to be giving at this year's Contact in the Desert, May 30th through June 3rd?
Yeah, so I'll be on a couple panels, and I'm moderating a panel with George Norrie, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, Russell Targ, Whitley Strieber, and then I'm giving talks about UFOs, about Bitcoin UFOs and DMT, and again about how to demonstrate that your experiences are indeed objectively real.
Awesome. I hope people that are interested click the link in the description to get your tickets for the 2024 Contact in the Desert number X10 in Indian Wells, California. Really great lineup of speakers.
Yeah.
Paul will be there this year. Again, that is May 30th through June 3rd. Get your tickets now, and I will be there. Come through and say hi. The link to the on-sale tickets are in the description of this video. And if you use promo code EARTH10, you'll get an extra 10% off that ticket price. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate everyone in the chat. Scotty Boy, Candace, and thanks so much for being a Ryder Ranger channel member. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. And we will see you guys next time. Paul, stay with me.